As I gave birth to my child, my parents announced coldly, "You are moving in with us permanently now," while they were already moving my sister's family of 6 into my house. When I told them I wanted to go home to my own property, they shouted aggressively, "Excuse me, what home? That house belongs to your sister now and forever." Mom added harshly, "She needs the space for her children more than a single mother like you. Start paying $2,000 monthly towards rent so we can also help your deserving sister." When I denied their demands, they shouted violently, "If we hear you say one more ungrateful word, we'll kick you and your worthless baby out of this house tonight." What they didn't know was that I'd been recording everything on my phone. My name is Allison, and I'm a 28-year-old woman who just became a mother to the most beautiful baby girl, Chloe. What should have been the happiest moment of my life quickly turned into a nightmare that I'm still recovering from. Let me start from the beginning. I've always been the responsible daughter in my family. While my older sister Melissa lived her life making one poor decision after another, I focused on my career, saved money, and eventually bought my own house at 26. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine, a modest 3-bedroom home in a decent neighborhood that I'd worked my ass off to afford. Melissa, on the other hand, had 4 kids with 2 different men by the time she was 30. Neither father stuck around, and she'd been living paycheck to paycheck, constantly asking our parents for money. Don't get me wrong, I love my nephews and niece, but Melissa never seemed to learn from her mistakes. She'd ask for help, get it, then make the same poor choices again. My parents, Donna and Henry, had always been harder on me than on Melissa. When I succeeded, it was expected. When Melissa failed, it was unfortunate but understandable. This dynamic had been going on for years, but I'd learned to live with it. I thought things might change when I got pregnant. I'd been dating Ethan for 2 years, and while we weren't married, we were in a committed relationship. When I got pregnant, he initially seemed supportive, but as the pregnancy progressed, he became distant. By month 6, he'd completely checked out, claiming he wasn't ready for fatherhood. I was devastated but determined to raise my child alone if necessary. Throughout my pregnancy, my parents seemed supportive. They'd visit, help with baby preparations, and even offered to watch Chloe when I went back to work. I was grateful for their support, especially since Ethan had essentially abandoned us. What I didn't realize was that they were already making plans behind my back. The day I gave birth to Chloe was supposed to be magical. After 12 hours of labor, she finally arrived, perfect, healthy, and beautiful. I was exhausted but overjoyed, holding my daughter for the first time. The next morning, my parents walked into the hospital room with expressions I'd never seen before. "Allison," my mother said coldly, "we need to talk." I was confused. I'd just given birth, and they looked like they were about to deliver bad news. "What's wrong?" I asked, still holding Chloe. "You're moving in with us permanently now," my father announced matter-of-factly. "We've already started the process." I stared at them, thinking I'd misheard. "What do you mean? I have my own house." That's when my mother dropped the bomb. "That house belongs to your sister now and forever. We've already started moving Melissa's family in. She needs the space for her children more than a single mother like you." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. "Excuse me, what home? That's my house. I bought it, I paid the mortgage, it's in my name." My father's face hardened. "Don't raise your voice at us. Melissa has 4 children and needs the space. You only have 1 baby. It makes more sense for her to have the bigger house." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You can't just move people into my house. It's not yours to give away." "We're not giving it away," my mother said harshly. "You'll be living with us now, and you'll start paying $2,000 monthly towards rent so we can also help your deserving sister with her expenses." I was speechless. They wanted me to pay rent to live in their house while my sister lived in mine for free? And they expected me to help subsidize Melissa's life on top of that? "This is insane," I said, my voice shaking. "I'm not paying you rent to live in your house while my sister lives in mine. I'm going home to my house." That's when both of them exploded. "If we hear you say one more ungrateful word, we'll kick you and your worthless baby out of this house tonight," my father shouted. My mother added, "You're being selfish and ungrateful. We're trying to help you, and this is how you repay us?" I was holding my newborn daughter, exhausted from childbirth, and my parents were screaming at me about being ungrateful for not accepting their insane demands. That's when I realized I needed to protect myself and Chloe. I discreetly pulled out my phone and started recording. "Let me understand this correctly," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You want me to move in with you permanently, pay you $2,000 a month in rent, while Melissa lives in my house for free?" "That's exactly right," my mother snapped. "And you'll be grateful for it." "Mom, that's my house. I bought it, I pay the mortgage. You can't just give it to Melissa." "We're not giving it to her," my father said. "We're making better use of it. She has 4 kids, you have 1. It's simple math." But it's my property. I worked for years to buy that house. And now you need to think about family, my mother said coldly. Melissa's children need stability. You're being selfish. I kept recording as they continued their rant. They went on for another 10 minutes, making it clear that they expected me to hand over my house to Melissa while paying them rent to live in their home. They also made several horrible comments about Chloe and about me being a single mother. Your sister deserves better than what she's had, my mother said. Those children need a stable home, not like that worthless baby you're holding. Don't you dare call my daughter worthless, I said, my voice rising. She's the product of a failed relationship with a man who didn't want her, my father said cruelly. Melissa's children are different. I was recording everything, and I could hardly believe the words coming out of their mouths. These were my parents, talking about their own granddaughter like she was nothing. The recording went on for about 15 minutes total. By the end, they had made it crystal clear that they expected me to give up my house, pay them rent, and be grateful for the privilege of living under their roof while supporting Melissa's family financially. After they left that night, I sat in my hospital bed, holding Chloe and crying. I felt completely alone and betrayed. But I also felt angry. Really, really angry. The next morning, I called my lawyer, David Brooks. I'd used him when I bought my house, and he'd helped me with a few other legal matters over the years. I explained the situation and sent him the recording. Allison, he said after listening to it, this is actually good news for you. Your parents have no legal right to your house, and this recording proves they're trying to coerce you into giving it up. But what if they've already moved Melissa in? I asked. Then Melissa is trespassing, and we can have her removed. Do you have any idea how they got access to your house? I thought about it and realized I'd given my parents a spare key months ago in case of emergencies. I'd never imagined they'd use it to essentially steal my house. They have a key, I admitted. Okay, that complicates things slightly, but not much. You didn't give them permission to move other people in, and you certainly didn't give them permission to transfer ownership. We need to act fast. David advised me to go to my house as soon as I was discharged from the hospital. If Melissa and her family were there, I should call the police immediately. He also suggested I change the locks as soon as possible. I was discharged 2 days later, and my parents came to pick me up. They acted like nothing had happened, chatting about baby clothes and nursery decorations. They drove me straight to their house, where they'd set up a small room for me and Chloe. This is temporary, right? I asked, though I already knew the answer. This is your home now, my mother said firmly. You'll be comfortable here. I played along for the moment, but I was already planning my next move. That afternoon, while my parents were out, I called an Uber and went to my house. What I found there made my blood boil. Melissa had indeed moved in with her 4 kids, ages 3, 5, 7, and 9. They'd rearranged all my furniture, put their belongings everywhere, and were treating my house like it was theirs. The kids had already drawn on the walls in what used to be my home office. When Melissa saw me, she didn't even have the decency to look embarrassed. Oh, Allison? Mom and Dad told me you were okay with this arrangement, she said casually. I'm definitely not okay with this arrangement, I said, trying to keep my voice level. This is my house, Melissa. Well, I have 4 kids and you only have 1, she said, as if that explained everything. Besides, Mom and Dad said you'd be happier living with them. Melissa, I need you to pack up and leave. This is my house, and I didn't give anyone permission to move you in. She laughed. You can't kick me out. Mom and Dad said this is my house now. Mom and Dad don't own this house. I do. And I'm asking you to leave. I'm not going anywhere, she said defiantly. My kids are finally settled somewhere nice. You can't just disrupt their lives. That's when I called the police. Officer Martinez arrived about 40 minutes later. I explained the situation and showed him the deed to my house, which clearly had my name on it. I also played him portions of the recording where my parents admitted to moving Melissa in without my permission. Ma'am, he said to Melissa, this isn't your house. You need to gather your belongings and leave. But my parents said, Melissa started. Your parents don't own this house, Officer Martinez interrupted. The owner is asking you to leave. If you don't leave voluntarily, you'll be arrested for trespassing. Melissa was furious, but she had no choice. She called our parents, screaming into the phone about how I was ruining everything and being selfish. I could hear my mother yelling back, but I couldn't make out the words. It took Melissa and her kids about 3 hours to pack up and leave. During that time, I assessed the damage to my house. There were crayon Ethans on the walls, scratches on my hardwood floors, and several items were missing, including my laptop and some jewelry. I'm going to need to file a police report for the missing items, I told Officer Martinez. I'd recommend it, he said. You should also consider getting a restraining order if your family continues to harass you. After Melissa left, I called a locksmith and had all locks changed. I also installed a security system that would alert me if anyone tried to enter my house uninvited. That evening, my parents called me dozens of times. When I finally answered, they were livid. "How could you do this to your sister?" My mother screamed. "She has 4 children. And I have one child who needs a home too," I replied calmly. "My home. You're being selfish and ungrateful," my father said. "We're trying to help you. By stealing my house and demanding I pay you rent? That's not help, that's extortion. If you don't come back here tonight, don't bother coming back at all," my mother threatened. "Fine," I said, and hung up. I spent that night in my own bed, in my own house, with my daughter sleeping peacefully beside me. It felt like a victory, but I knew the war wasn't over. The next morning, I received a text from Melissa, "I hope you're happy. My kids are traumatized from being kicked out of their home." I replied, "It was never their home. It's my home." She responded with a string of profanities and accusations, claiming I was a horrible person for putting my own needs above her children's needs. I screenshot everything and sent it to my lawyer. Over the next few days, my parents and Melissa continued their harassment campaign. They called me constantly, sent me nasty texts, and even showed up at my house demanding to be let in. I documented everything and shared it with David. "You definitely need a restraining order," he advised. "This level of harassment is unacceptable." "What about the missing items from my house?" I asked. "We'll add that to the police report. If they don't return your belongings, we can pursue theft charges." That's when I decided to take things a step further. I'd been thinking about the recording I'd made at the hospital, and I realized I had something that could really embarrass my parents and Melissa. I posted the story on Reddit, along with portions of the recording, with names changed, of course. The response was overwhelming. Hundreds of people commented, supporting my decision and sharing their own stories of family betrayal. Many people suggested I go public with a full story, including the recording. That's when I got an idea that would become my ultimate revenge. I decided to post the full recording on social media, with a detailed explanation of what had happened. I tagged my parents and Melissa, along with all their friends and family members. I also posted it in local community groups where people knew our family. The response was immediate and brutal. My parents and Melissa were absolutely roasted in the comments. People called them entitled, manipulative, and abusive. Several of my parents' friends and neighbors commented, expressing shock at their behavior. My mother's sister, Aunt Carol, commented, "Donna, I can't believe you would treat Allison this way. She's always been such a good daughter." My father's boss somehow saw the post and commented, "Bob, this is really disappointing. I had no idea you were capable of treating your own daughter like this." Even Melissa's ex-boyfriend, the father of 2 of her children, commented, "This is exactly the kind of drama I was trying to avoid. Melissa, you need to get your priorities straight." The post went viral locally, getting shared hundreds of times. My parents and Melissa were humiliated, and rightfully so. But I wasn't done yet. I also decided to file a civil lawsuit against my parents for attempted theft and harassment. David helped me put together a case that included the recordings, the documentation of their harassment, and the evidence of them giving Melissa unauthorized access to my house. "We're not going to win a lot of money," David explained, "but we'll make a point. And we might be able to get a judgment that prevents them from contacting you in the future." The lawsuit was filed 2 weeks after the social media post. My parents were served with papers at their home, and Melissa was served at her new apartment, which my parents were now paying for, according to the grapevine. The local newspaper picked up the story, running a piece titled "Local Family Feud Goes Public Over Property Dispute." They didn't use names, but anyone who knew our family could figure out who they were writing about. My parents tried to fight back, hiring their own lawyer and claiming I was being vindictive and cruel. They argued that they were just trying to help their daughter and grandchildren, and that I was being selfish. But the recording spoke for itself. Their lawyer eventually advised them to settle out of court, which they did. I didn't get a lot of money, but I got a formal apology letter and a legally binding agreement that they would not contact me or come to my house without my permission. Melissa also tried to sue me for emotional distress and defamation, but her case was thrown out immediately. The judge basically told her that posting a truthful recording of her own words couldn't be considered defamation. The whole ordeal took about 6 months to resolve completely. During that time, I had to deal with ongoing harassment from extended family members who thought I should have just gone along with my parents' demands. But I also received incredible support from friends, co-workers, and even strangers who had seen my story online. My neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, brought me meals for weeks after Chloe was born. My co-workers started a fund to help me with legal expenses. The parents at the daycare where I eventually enrolled Chloe were incredibly supportive and understanding. But the most meaningful support came from other women who had been through similar situations. I received dozens of messages from women who had been bullied by their families, taken advantage of by relatives, or manipulated into giving up their independence. Many of them said my story gave them the courage to stand up for themselves. One woman, Maria, wrote to me, "I've been letting my brother live in my house for free for 3 years while I pay rent somewhere else. Your story made me realize I need to take my house back." Another woman, Jennifer, said, "My parents have been emotionally blackmailing me for years, using my kids as leverage. Seeing you stand up to your parents showed me that I can do the same." These messages meant more to me than any legal victory or social media vindication. I realized that by sharing my story, I'd accidentally created a platform for other women to share theirs. As for my relationship with my parents and Melissa, it's essentially over. We have no contact except through lawyers when necessary. My parents have never met Chloe properly, and honestly, I'm okay with that. I don't want my daughter growing up thinking it's normal for family members to treat each other the way they treated me. Melissa eventually had to move in with my parents since she couldn't afford the apartment they'd been paying for. According to mutual friends, it's been a disaster. 4 kids, 2 adults, and my parents all living in a 3-bedroom house has created exactly the kind of chaos you'd expect. Melissa and my mother apparently fight constantly, and my father spends most of his time at work or out of the house. I heard through the grapevine that Melissa's oldest son was caught stealing from my parents' neighbors, and that social services had been called to the house twice due to noise complaints and reports of the children being left unsupervised. It's sad for the kids, but it's also a natural consequence of the choices Melissa and my parents made. The funniest part of the whole situation is that Melissa apparently expected me to take her and the kids back into my house after a few months. She had my mother call me, violating the no-contact agreement, to ask if the kids could visit their rooms at my house. I reminded my mother that there had never been any rooms for Melissa's kids in my house, and that they were violating our legal agreement by contacting me. They stopped calling after that. These days, Chloe and I live peacefully in our house. I've made some updates and improvements, including a beautiful nursery that I designed myself. I've also started a small blog about single motherhood and family drama that has gained a modest following. I still get questions about whether I regret how I handled this situation. Some people think I should have been more family-oriented, more willing to compromise. But I honestly believe that what my parents and Melissa did was theft, pure and simple. They tried to steal my house, my independence, and my dignity. They wanted me to pay them for the privilege of being robbed. I also think about what kind of example I want to set for Chloe. Do I want her to grow up thinking it's normal to let family members take advantage of her? Do I want her to believe that being a single mother makes her less deserving of respect and independence? Absolutely not. By standing up for myself, I showed Chloe that women can be strong, independent, and unwilling to accept unfair treatment, even from family members. I showed her that her mother won't be pushed around, manipulated, or bullied into giving up what she's worked for. I also learned a lot about the legal system and how to protect myself. I now have a security system, a lawyer on retainer, and a much better understanding of my rights as a property owner. I've also learned to document everything, keep records, and never assume that family members will act in good faith. The recording I made at the hospital was the key to everything. Without it, it would have been my word against theirs, and knowing my parents, they would have denied everything. But with the recording, I had undeniable proof of their intentions and their cruelty. But let me back up and tell you about some of the other things that happened during those 6 months of legal battles that I haven't mentioned yet. The drama didn't end with Melissa moving out of my house. If anything, it escalated. About 2 weeks after I kicked Melissa out, I started receiving anonymous threatening messages on social media. Someone was creating fake accounts and sending me messages like, "You'll regret what you did to your sister and your baby doesn't deserve a selfish mother like you." The messages were always sent late at night, and they were clearly meant to scare me. I suspected it was Melissa, but I couldn't prove it. The accounts were always deleted after sending the messages, and they used generic names like Concerned Friend 47 or Truth Teller 99. I screenshot every message and added them to my growing file of evidence. Then the harassment escalated to real life. I started finding my garbage cans knocked over every Tuesday morning. My car was keyed twice in my own driveway. Someone left a bag of dog poop on my front porch with a note that said, "For the piece of shit who abandoned her family." The worst incident happened when Chloe was about 3 months old. I came home from grocery shopping to find all 4 of my car tires slashed. I was stranded in my driveway with a baby in a car full of groceries, including frozen items that needed to be put away immediately. I called the police, and Officer Martinez came out again. He was starting to know me by name, which wasn't exactly how I'd wanted to become familiar with local law enforcement. "This is getting serious, Allison," he said as he examined my tires. "Someone is really committed to making your life difficult." "I think it's my sister," I told him. She's been angry since I kicked her out of my house. Do you have any proof? He asked. Not direct proof, but she's the only person who would have this much motivation to harass me. Officer Martinez helped me file another police report and recommended I install security cameras around my property. If someone is this determined to mess with you, they're eventually going to get caught on camera, he said. I took his advice and installed a comprehensive security system with cameras covering my driveway, front porch, and backyard. It was expensive, but I figured it was worth it for peace of mind. The cameras paid off about a week later. I woke up one morning to find my mailbox had been destroyed with what looked like a baseball bat. But this time, I had everything on video. The footage clearly showed Melissa's boyfriend, Danny, getting out of a car at 2:30 a.m. and attacking my mailbox with a metal bat. You could see his face clearly in the infrared camera footage. Melissa was in the passenger seat of the car, and you could see her pointing toward my house and gesturing animatedly. I was so excited to finally have proof that I called Officer Martinez immediately, even though it was 6 a.m. We've got them, he said after watching the footage. This is destruction of property, and we can probably get your sister for conspiracy since she was clearly directing the activity. Both Melissa and Danny were arrested 3 days later after the warrant was processed. Melissa was charged with conspiracy to commit vandalism, and Danny was charged with destruction of property. The bail was set at $2,000 each, which my parents paid, but not before Melissa spent 2 nights in jail while the paperwork was processed. The arrest made the local news, and the story mentioned that it was related to an ongoing family property dispute. My parents were mortified. My mother called me crying, begging me to drop the charges. Please, Allison, she sobbed. Melissa made a mistake, but she doesn't deserve to have a criminal record. She's been harassing me for months, I said calmly. She's been sending threatening messages, vandalizing my property, and now she's been caught on camera destroying my mailbox. This wasn't a mistake, it was a pattern of criminal behavior. But think about her children, my mother pleaded. How will this affect them? Maybe Melissa should have thought about her children before she decided to become a criminal, I replied. I'm not dropping the charges. My mother hung up on me, but I didn't care. I was done enabling Melissa's behavior and done letting my parents manipulate me into accepting unacceptable treatment. The criminal charges added another layer to our civil lawsuit. David was thrilled to have the additional evidence of harassment and stalking. It strengthened our case considerably and gave us more leverage in settlement negotiations. Meanwhile, the social media attention was having unexpected consequences for my parents and Melissa. My father's employer, a local insurance company, started receiving complaints from customers who had seen the viral posts. Apparently, several clients said they didn't want to do business with someone who would treat their own daughter so badly. My father's boss, Mr. Thompson, called him into his office and told him that the negative publicity was affecting the company's reputation. He didn't fire my father, but he did remove him from several high-profile accounts, and basically told him to keep his family drama private. My mother, who worked part-time at a local boutique, wasn't so lucky. The owner of the boutique, Mrs. Patterson, had seen the social media posts and decided she didn't want someone with such a negative reputation representing her business. My mother was fired, and Mrs. Patterson made it clear that the firing was directly related to the family drama. Melissa, who had been working at a local restaurant, was also fired when her manager saw the posts. Apparently, several customers had recognized her and complained to management about having someone with a criminal record serving their food. The economic consequences were swift and severe. My parents went from having 2 incomes to having just my father's reduced income. Melissa went from having a job to being unemployed with 4 kids to support. They were all struggling financially, and it was largely due to their own choices and actions. I might have felt bad for them if they had shown any remorse or taken any responsibility for their actions. But instead, they doubled down on their victim mentality. They started telling people that I was vindictive and cruel, that I was destroying the family over a simple misunderstanding. The simple misunderstanding narrative was particularly infuriating to me. They tried to frame the whole situation as if they had just made a small mistake in communication, rather than attempting to steal my house and force me into financial servitude. Some extended family members bought into this narrative. My father's brother, Uncle Mike, called me and tried to convince me to be the bigger person and reconcile with the family. Allison, I know your parents made some mistakes, he said, but they're still your parents. And Melissa is still your sister. Family should forgive family. Uncle Mike, I said, they tried to steal my house. They moved Melissa's family into my home without my permission while I was giving birth. They demanded I pay them rent while subsidizing Melissa's lifestyle. They called my daughter worthless. This isn't a mistake, this is abuse. But you're tearing the family apart, he said. Can't you just let it go? They tore the family apart when they decided to steal from me, I replied. I'm just protecting myself and my daughter. Uncle Mike wasn't the only one who tried to pressure me into backing down. My mother's sister, Aunt Rebecca, sent me a long email about the importance of family unity and Christian forgiveness. Several family friends called or texted, suggesting that I was being too harsh and that I should consider the impact on Melissa's children. But for every person who criticized my actions, there were 2 or 3 who supported me. My college roommate, Amy, flew in from California to help me with Chloe and provide moral support during the legal proceedings. My coworkers organized a meal train to make sure I had dinner every night for 2 months. Even my mailman, who had seen the destruction of my mailbox, told me he hoped I got those criminals. The most surprising support came from Melissa's ex-boyfriend, Marcus, who is the father of her 2 middle children. He called me out of the blue one day and asked if we could meet for coffee. "I want you to know that I think you're doing the right thing," he said when we met at a local cafe. "Melissa has been manipulating and taking advantage of people for years. Your parents have been enabling her behavior, and it's hurt a lot of people, including her own kids." "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "But I'm worried about how this affects the children." "The kids are going to be fine," Marcus said. "They're resilient and honestly, they need to see that there are consequences for bad behavior. Melissa has been teaching them that they can take whatever they want and that other people will always bail them out of trouble. Maybe this will be a wake-up call." Marcus also told me something that I hadn't known before. Apparently, Melissa had been telling people that I had abandoned her and the kids when I moved out of my parents' house years earlier. She had been painting herself as the victim of my selfishness for years, which explained why some family members were so quick to support her version of events. "Melissa has always been good at playing the victim," Marcus said. "But the truth is, she's had opportunities to improve her situation and she's chosen not to take them. Your parents have been giving her money for years, and she's never used it to get ahead. She's just used it to maintain her lifestyle without having to work for it." This conversation was eye-opening for me. I realized that the current situation wasn't just about my house, it was about a long pattern of Melissa taking advantage of people and my parents enabling her behavior. By standing up to them, I wasn't just protecting my own interests, I was potentially breaking a cycle that had been going on for years. The legal proceedings moved slowly, as legal proceedings tend to do. There were depositions, document requests, and endless paperwork. David had to request financial records from my parents to prove that they had been supporting Melissa for years, which they fought tooth and nail. During Melissa's deposition, she was asked directly whether she had authorized the harassment campaign against me. She denied it under oath, but when confronted with the video evidence of Danny vandalizing my mailbox, she claimed she had been protecting her family from my vindictive attacks. "What vindictive attacks?" David asked. "She kicked me and my children out of our home," Melissa said. "It wasn't your home," David replied. "It was Allison's home, which she owned and you were occupying without permission." "My parents said it was my home," Melissa insisted. "Your parents don't own that house," David said. "They had no legal right to give it to you." The deposition went on like this for hours. Melissa couldn't seem to grasp that her parents' opinions about who should live in my house didn't override the actual legal ownership of the property. She kept insisting that she had been wronged and that her children had been traumatized by being forced to move. My parents' depositions were even more frustrating. They maintained that they had been trying to help both of their daughters and that I had been ungrateful and selfish. When played the recording from the hospital, they claimed they had been emotional and didn't mean what they said. "You called your granddaughter worthless," David pointed out. "We were upset," my mother said. "We didn't mean it." "You demanded that Allison pay you $2,000 per month in rent while her sister lived in Allison's house for free," David continued. "We were trying to help Melissa," my father said. "She has 4 children." "By stealing from Allison?" David asked. "We weren't stealing," my mother said. "We were trying to make better use of the space." They simply could not or would not acknowledge that they had done anything wrong. In their minds, they were the victims of my selfishness and vindictiveness. They had been trying to help their daughter and grandchildren, and I had responded by destroying the family. This delusional thinking became a pattern throughout the legal proceedings. No matter how much evidence was presented, no matter how clearly their actions were documented, they maintained that they were in the right and I was in the wrong. The criminal case against Melissa and Danny moved more quickly than the civil case. Danny pleaded guilty to destruction of property and was sentenced to 6 months probation and restitution for the cost of my mailbox. Melissa initially pleaded not guilty to conspiracy charges, but eventually accepted a plea deal that gave her 1 year of probation and a requirement to attend anger management classes. The anger management requirement was particularly satisfying to me. Melissa had always had a temper, and she'd been taking it out on other people for years. Maybe learning some coping skills would help her break the cycle of poor decision-making that had characterized her adult life. The criminal convictions also helped our civil case. It's hard to claim you're the victim when you've been convicted of crimes related to the situation. Melissa's criminal record became part of the public record, which meant that anyone who Googled her name would find information about her conviction for conspiring to vandalize her sister's property. As the legal battles dragged on, I started to notice changes in my own life that I hadn't expected. I was becoming more confident, more assertive, and more willing to stand up for myself in other situations. The experience of successfully fighting back against my family's abuse had given me a new sense of personal power. At work, I started speaking up more in meetings and advocating for myself during performance reviews. I asked for and received a promotion and a raise, partly because I had learned to articulate my value and demand fair treatment. The skills I developed during my legal battles were transferable to other areas of my life. I also started dating again, something I hadn't thought I'd be ready for so soon after Chloe's birth. A coworker introduced me to her brother, Tom, who was a divorced father of two. We started slowly, just coffee dates and phone calls, but eventually developed a solid relationship. Tom was incredibly supportive of my legal battles and never once suggested that I should reconcile with my family for the sake of peace. He understood that sometimes family members can be toxic and that it's okay to cut them out of your life. My ex-wife's family tried to manipulate me for years, he told me. They wanted me to stay in an unhappy marriage for the sake of their grandchildren. It took me a long time to realize that I wasn't responsible for managing their emotions or making them happy. Sometimes you have to prioritize your own well-being. Tom's support was incredibly valuable during the most difficult parts of the legal process. He helped me maintain perspective and reminded me that I was fighting for the right reasons. The civil case was finally resolved about 10 months after it began. My parents agreed to pay my legal fees, provide a formal written apology, and sign a legally binding agreement that they would not contact me or come to my property without my explicit permission. They also had to acknowledge in writing that my house had always been my property and that they had no legal right to give it to Melissa or anyone else. Additionally, they agreed to return my laptop and jewelry that had gone missing when Melissa moved out of my house. The settlement wasn't about money, it was about establishing clear boundaries and getting official recognition that their behavior had been wrong. The written apology was particularly important to me because it meant they had to acknowledge, in writing, that they had attempted to take my property without permission, that they had treated me unfairly, and that their demand for $2,000 monthly rent while Melissa lived in my house for free had been completely unreasonable and legally baseless. Melissa was not part of the civil settlement since she had already been handled through the criminal courts, but she was included in the no-contact agreement. None of them were allowed to contact me directly or indirectly, and they were prohibited from coming to my house or workplace. Looking back, I'm grateful for the whole experience, as traumatic as it was. It showed me who my real friends are, it taught me to stand up for myself, and it gave me a story that has helped other women in similar situations. It also showed me that family doesn't always mean support and love. Sometimes family members are the ones who hurt you the most, and it's okay to cut them out of your life if they're toxic. Blood relation doesn't give someone the right to steal from you, manipulate you, or treat you badly. Chloe is now 10 months old, and she's the light of my life. She's happy, healthy, and growing up in a home where she's wanted and loved. She has a mother who fought for her rights and her independence, and who will continue to fight for her daughter's future. I still have the recording saved on my phone, and I sometimes listen to it when I need to remind myself why I made the choices I did. It's a reminder of how cruel people can be, but also of how strong I was in that moment. I was holding my newborn daughter, exhausted from childbirth, and being verbally attacked by my own parents. But I had the presence of mind to document what was happening, and that documentation changed everything. The whole experience taught me that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who will hurt you the worst. But it also taught me that I'm stronger than I ever imagined, and that I don't need anyone's permission to live my life on my own terms. Chloe and I are doing just fine on our own,